I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Why is the Constitution of the United States so exceptional? Well, the difference is so small that it almost escapes you. But it's so great, it tells you the whole story in just 3 words. We, the people.
September 17th is Constitution Day. Constitution Day is not a federal holiday, but it's a federal day of observance. It's a day established to remember and memorialize the adoption of the United States Constitution and the rights we have as citizens. Every year at John Adams Academy, we gather together not simply to remember the Constitution of the United States of America, but to celebrate it. It is indeed a document worth celebrating. We hold a large assembly with our staff and our scholars. We invite guest speakers, scholar speakers, and enjoy choir performances. In fact, Constitution Day is one of our largest celebrations of the year. This year with COVID-19, however, Californians are prevented from gathering in large groups. Scholars at 2 of our campuses are currently engaged in distance learning. This year, with all of the challenges and pressures placed on all of us, we were faced with the choice of finding a new way of celebrating Constitution Day or simply pressing pause and looking ahead to next year. As we discussed that possibility of not observing and celebrating Constitution Day, it became more and more evident that failure to do so was not an option. I'm positive that our community would have given us a pass. They would have understood. You all would have been very understanding and all very gracious. I know that to be true. But I also know that the Constitution is more than just a piece of parchment. Its adoption is more than simply an event in history. It's more than just simply words on a page. The United States Constitution is a document that recognizes foundational principles, that acknowledges the rights of every citizen and the source of those rights, that establishes the unique American form of government designed to preserve and protect those rights. In his farewell address in 1989, President Ronald Reagan reminded us that the Constitution is not the government's document, but it's our document. He said, almost all of the world's constitutions are documents in which governments tell the people what their privileges are. Our Constitution is a document in which we, the people, tell the government what it is allowed to do. We, the people, are free, end quote. Because this is our document, we must celebrate it. We must study it. We must discuss it and share it. But more importantly, we must defend it. We, the people of the United States of America, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution of the United States of America. In order to form a more perfect union. We are not perfect. Our founders never claimed to be, nor do we. But we cannot deny that the American experience has resulted in a more perfect union, more perfect than any other government which has heretofore been attempted. Notice that the preamble of the Constitution does not distinguish between the identities of we the people. It is speaking to every citizen. This is every American's document. The principles contained in the Declaration of Independence and given shape in the Constitution are not based on color, not based on creed or class or religion. The foundational American principles speak to the heart of every person, every man, woman, and child. We are all under one banner. Depending on where you live in America today, you've either turned on your television and seen violence and riots in the streets, or you just simply had to look out your front door. Regular Americans, just like you and I, can be seen sitting at tables in restaurants as they're surrounded by angry mobs, cursing and screaming at them. There exists within the hearts of some to desire to replace America's Republican democracy with socialism. In order to achieve this goal, what must they do? To have control, they must change America from a nation of freedom. They must attack the Constitution, the people's document, the document that enshrines and preserves our freedoms. They must also make us afraid. They must attack and vilify those who have sworn to uphold and defend the Constitution, to protect and serve our communities, to uphold the rule of law. Abraham Lincoln reminds us that the greatest threat to our Constitution and our republic does not come from abroad, but it's domestic. He says, quote, "At what point, then, is the approach of danger to be expected? I answer, if it ever reach us, it must spring up amongst us. It cannot come from abroad. If destruction be our lot, we must ourselves be its author and its finisher. As a nation of free men, we must live through all time or die by suicide." End quote. At least 13 cities across the United States have voted to significantly cut funding for their police. Cities like Austin, New York, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Seattle, Portland, just to name a few. Our hearts go out to everyone impacted by violence of any kind, including the good men and women of law enforcement, especially those being targeted for simply wearing a badge. Fear, division, violence, they are not the answer. The great American civil rights leaders, like Martin Luther King Jr., were not fighting to fundamentally change America. They did not seek to abolish the Constitution. On the contrary, they struggled to be fully included in the promise of America, to receive the full benefit and protections of the Constitution that was their right as citizens of this great nation. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. This was said by King in his famous I Have a Dream speech. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. End quote. These great American civil rights leaders knew that America was not perfect in living out its founding principles. But the founding principles were good, true, and noble, that those founding principles should be applied fairly to all Americans. He closed his famous speech with the following words highlighting the importance of freedom. Quote, "And when this happens, and when we allow freedom ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last." King stood against violence and for peace. He stood against division and for unity. He stood against hate and for love. He stood for the Constitution. Another critical freedom, a freedom that directly impacts every American citizen, is the freedom for every family to choose the educational option that best fits the needs of each of your children. The surest way to control a people is to keep them from truth and knowledge. Now, the United States Constitution does not speak to the issue of education. It is left to the states. The founders, however, recognized the importance of education in maintaining our Constitution and protecting our rights. Thomas Jefferson said, "I know no safe depository of the ultimate powers of the society, but the people themselves. And if we think them not enlightened enough to exercise their control with a wholesome discretion, the remedy is not to take it from them, but to inform their discretion by education. This is the true corrective of abuses of constitutional power." End quote. The California Constitution, like many other states, includes a protection for each child to a free and equitable public education. Over the years, many states have prevented real education choice to families, including financial resources. Since the Charter Schools Act was passed in California in 1992, California has been implementing laws making it harder to start and run charter schools. Recently, the California legislature passed and Governor Newsom signed a bill that refused to fund growing public schools, both charter and district, resulting in the defunding of thousands of students seeking a choice in public education. This is in direct violation of the California Constitution, which guarantees a free and equitable public education to every child. This violation is being challenged in the courts. Constitutions matter. There's no more important defense of freedom than knowledge. Education is the surest path to liberty. In his famous Blessings of Liberty and Education speech delivered in 1894, Frederick Douglass tells us just how important. Quote, "Education means emancipation. It means light and liberty. It means the uplifting of the soul of man into the glorious light of truth, the light only by which men can be free. To deny education to any people is one of the greatest crimes against human nature. It is to deny them the means of freedom and the rightful pursuit of happiness and to defeat the very end of their being." End quote. Whether charter public schools, district public schools, homeschool, independent study, private, parochial, parents should have the ability, including the financial resources, to choose the educational option that best fits the needs of their children. And every educational institution should have to compete for their business. Education must be about the children, not about adults. Knowing that education is the surest safeguard of liberty, we must demand access to quality education of our choice. We are living through history, you and I. In fact, we are making history. What we do in our lives, every action that we take, matters. There are forces seeking to make us afraid so that we will give up and give in. They want to keep us from the light of truth, but we must have courage. Courage is doing what's right even though you're afraid. As Reagan reminds us, you and I have courage to say to our enemies, there is a price we will not pay. There is a point beyond which they must not advance. We must defend the Constitution and the glorious light of truth. Ronald Reagan presented us a choice. We will preserve for our children this, the last best hope of man on earth, or we will sentence them to take the last step into 1,000 years of darkness. Generations of Americans have chosen to defend the Constitution, to preserve it and pass it down to their posterity. This is now our generation's watch. I do not believe that destruction will be our lot. I do not believe that we will sentence our children to 1,000 years of darkness. On this Constitution Day, on every day, it is not only our duty to celebrate it, but to uphold and defend it. This document, our Constitution, and hand it inviolate to our posterity. Thank you.
If tomorrow all the things were gone I'd worked for all my life, and I had to start again with just my children and my wife. I thank my lucky stars to be living here today, 'cause the flag still stands for freedom, and they can't take that away. Where at least I know I'm free, and I won't forget the man who died, who gave that right to me, and I'll gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today, 'cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA.
From the lakes of Minnesota to the hills of Tennessee, across the plains of Texas, from sea to shining sea, from Detroit down to Houston and New York to LA. Well, there's pride in every American heart, and it's time we stand and say, stand and say that I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the man who died, who gave that right to me. And I'm glad we stand up next to you and defend us till today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. America.
again, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the man who died, who gave that right to me, and I'll gladly stand.